2019, I sold 76 companies in 1 year for about 1.27 billion. And that year, as I sold those businesses, I got to begin living the life that I wanted to live that would have taken me 20 or 30 years. My very first exit was an unintentional exit. I was just trying to source capital, and some corporate giants came in, kind of behind the scenes, took advantage of me at a level that I didn't even know the game we were playing, And at the last hour, it was like, hey, by the way, this is about what's going to happen to you. And it cost me, it probably cost me in the long run 20 to 30 million that I could have had personally. It was a big, big lesson. And they gave me 24 hours to make a decision. I was outclassed, I was outplayed. I had no idea. I really had no business playing the game that they were playing because I wasn't prepared. And so I'm driving back in the next day. I have to go in and sign some papers, mad and frustrated. And the words of my mother kind of came back, in any low, if you can find gratitude in the moment, it becomes a catalyst for your greatest lessons in life. And I started thinking, I was like, this is interesting. I'm trying to get to a place of positivity. How do I actually see the benefit in what just happened to me? And it dawned on me, they were actually giving me what's in the business realm, in the exiting of companies, what was called 7 times multiple on my EBITDA, right? So if I were to work the same amount of hours for the next 7 years doing the exact same thing, and I didn't see any increase or decrease, essentially what they're doing is giving me 7 years of my life back in this moment. Now, I might have wanted 10 or 20 years of my life back, but they're giving me 7. And I found this moment of gratitude on the way back in after one of the worst days of my business career. I thought, you know what? If I could live my life today as if I'd want to live it in 7 years with this revenue, what would my life look like? I started to who gets that blessing in life, right? And then it became the catalyst or the mantra of how I do business. How do I shrink down my time so that instead of living, trying to live 100 lifetimes, and dying with this expectation of giving back later, what if I could actually live 100 lifetimes today in this process of shrinking down time by selling something at an exponential multiple without having to go through the process, and then take that capital and go do something massive with it? Capitalism, in its right context, is very serving of the general population, because what it says is may the best service or product delivered in the right way win, right? With the right price. And that part of capitalism is amazing, right? Because at that point, it serves the consumer. My businesses exist to make money, but my businesses should also have an altruistic look at serving the customer and having a greater reach than just the business itself. And to me, that's where I think capitalism in its purest form does the greatest good. There are really 5 phases to business. There's what we call the startup phase. Then we move into perseverance. That's pre-profit. It's when we're still wearing lots of hats and there's not enough people. We get into viability. That's phase 3. That's when we actually look at the business and it's ready for growth. Then scale, and then lastly, succession. I have a systematic way of pushing the businesses through every phase with complete intention. And that's the problem with most small business owners. You got a guy that he's running a small tech company or a dry cleaner or whatever it is. They will get into what we call perseverance mode, where they're making a little bit of money. And perseverance is you might be profitable 1 month, you might not be profitable next month. You might be profitable for 6 months, and then you might not be, right? And you don't have the right people in the right seats. You don't have the right systems. There's no way to scale it. But what they do is they start taking all their revenue and they start putting it into areas that really shouldn't be invested in until they're truly viable. And they misstep because they don't know the sequencing. What I've realized is there's a sequencing to growing businesses. And it really doesn't matter what the business is. There's a sequencing to it. And if I can actually grow the business properly, hire the right people, create the right governance layers, understand the right KPIs, right, at the right time, then I can systematically get it through that process faster than just about anyone else. I've mastered that, and that's how we grow and run and scale and potentially exit all the businesses. Money, resources of any kind, money specifically, but really resources, really become the greatest revealer of actually what's inside. Most people, they get to speak they get to speak from their audible voice. Some people get a megaphone and a microphone. And I feel like the money and resources we get is it's an amplification system of who we really are. And I remember having a real deep thought when I was making my first good money, thinking, who do I want to be? Yes, I can live a good life. I can up my standard of living, but in the end, it's like I want to make sure that this doesn't just serve me, And so, I think that money is the ultimate revealer, and I think that as you see people, they're obtaining this money with greed, you just find more greed. They take advantage of more people. For instance, it's like you take somebody like Elon Musk. Elon's goals is he wants to change how we navigate not just our globe, but the entire planetary system. And the more money he makes, the more it reveals his real desire, which is like to really change how we navigate everything, And it's like from cars to rockets to trains and it's like, it really just kind of reveals who Elon was. Well, if Elon was sitting there broke, like, you might have all these dreams and aspirations, but Elon wealthy is like showing that's really who he is. Life success, to go back just a step, I have amazing parents, and I was super fortunate to grow up in an environment where my father was an entrepreneur, but also my mother was an entrepreneur. Both of them started businesses. Both of them ran successful businesses. And I learned so much about just like the life operating system through them that I was super fortunate. I feel like I had a jump start where a lot of people did not, and it wasn't really my college education or formal education anyway that led me to where I am. It was the life education, and really just some basic principles that were huge for me. Is I had a father who understood and had a great relationship with fear. He left his corporate job to try to pursue what was his dream. And I watched him do it. And sometimes he was successful. Sometimes we were extremely poor as a family, and sometimes we were wealthy. And I watched that. And he was also present in my life. And so I saw this great dad who also had the ups and downs of the entrepreneurial journey. And so for me, while he probably looks back on those periods of time and he probably says to himself, I never want to go back to those low moments. I look at those low moments and I think, what's the worst that can happen if I go all in? I end up spending time with my family. I end up having a good relationship with my kids, right? He really had a great relationship with fear and taught me and gave me a great gift. And that is to understand, what to truly fear, right? The fear of loss is really not something we should fear. Sometimes in loss, it brings us our greatest opportunity. The greatest times I ever had with my father was when we were at the lowest point financially, right? To me, it's just like watching a person navigate that and experiencing that really helped me deal with fear. The second thing that he taught me is really ego is the enemy. My dad is a quiet leader who is not going to be an alpha, beat his chest. You're never going to find him on social media touting his wares. He was a guy who led from the back, who was never afraid of picking up the shovel himself, who was quiet, who was a leader in his own right, very demonstrative, but in a very quiet sense. And his actions and his results always far outspoke his words or the volume of his voice. The thing I learned from my mother, though, was gratitude. And that, I had suffered quite a bit of loss in my younger life. I lost a sister, then later lost a brother. And my mom, just a very strong, an emotionally aware person, constantly bring me back towards this point of gratitude. She would say, Eddie, tell me about, I would struggle with the loss of my sister. And she would say, Eddie, let's talk about your sister. Let's talk about your favorite day. Let's talk about the favorite toy she had. Let's talk about what was your favorite moment. And then she would help me rehearse gratitude, even in loss. And some of the greatest lessons I've ever learned in my life was to be afraid of the things that you should intentionally be afraid of. To remind myself constantly that ego actually is the enemy. Ego actually prevents me from getting where I want to go. And if I can find gratitude in the low moments, they become catalysts for massive growth.